Hello everyone, this is My Africa Show and I am Tsagabele. Today we are outside of our studio at Mado Hotel attending this big event organized by the Model African Union, by the coming young generation. So we'll be going inside, we'll see what's going on and what topics are we going to talk about, who is invited and what do they have to say for the coming young generation.
Model Africa Union Ethiopia is a non-profit organization that works on various areas that affect Africa and increase youth engagement on African issues by creating awareness on AU 2063 Agenda, SDGs, and AUC Youth Initiative. The organization has also been working for 4 years on young girls, women empowerment, youth leadership, cultural diplomacy, creating peace for youth, and inclusive youth engagement. Model Africa Union Ethiopia has hosted multiple events as the one we have attended today, covering different agendas and creating a platform for the youth to engage on African affairs. This event will be about accelerating the implementation of AFTFCA and the action that should be taken to bring the AFTFCA on ground. As My Africa Show, we appreciate and encourage such kind of organizations and events because it helps the young generation to become more conscious about the things going on in Africa and create a linkage among each other in order to solve African problems and prepare the youth to take lead in global affairs by learning different skills as teamwork, leadership, diplomacy, and so on.
Today we have the keynote. We'll be having Ms. Chido, the Youth Envoy for the African Union, joining us in a video here. So we'll have her speech and come back to you.
I welcome you all for this event today as youth gather ahead of the upcoming AU Summit. To put it in context, 44 African Union member states have ratified the agreement establishing the African Continental Free Trade Area. And it is estimated that the gradual elimination of tariffs on 90% of goods and reduced barriers to trade and services could raise income by 7% or $450 billion by 2035, reducing the number of people living in extreme poverty by 30 million and lifting other 68 million people from moderate poverty. Now, with regard to youth, Africa has registered rapid and substantial population growth in the recent years. People under the age of 25 years make up over 60% of the population. And while this presents significant opportunities to harness the demographic dividend, young people continue to be faced with multidimensional challenges. And these require collaborative, adaptive, as well as innovative solutions. Africa's youth is affected by high unemployment rates, low quality jobs, labor market inequalities, and barriers to cross-border trade. And the AFTFCA agreement is the principal catalytic framework through which Africa's youth will be able to effectively harness productive economic opportunities, businesses, and new methods of service delivery. The inclusion of youth in the development and implementation of trade policy ensures that the progressive eradication of barriers to participation in international trade for micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. It is also essential that youth be provided with opportunities to participate in trade policy making in order to highlight and propose recommendations on and best solutions for eliminating barriers they face in integrating their businesses into regional and global value chains. I believe that the sustainability of the AFTFCA greatly depends on the capacity of African governments to harness the potential of their youth, as well as this is the largest demographic that we have on the continent, and by guaranteeing that we as young people are provided with the economic opportunities that we deserve. Governments must protect youth's intellectual property rights, ensuring in fact that the governments benefit from young people's innovations and ideas. The AFTFCA agenda will be expanded to allow professional and educational mobility and to improve the skills of Africa's youth workers. I am looking forward to hear about the outcome of this meeting, and I wish you all fruitful deliberations as we work together towards achieving the Africa that we want.
We the African young people. We aim that the African Continental Trade Agreement is a flagship of the Agenda 2063, the Africa we want, integrated, one big African market, and that's what we're looking for, right? And as Ms. Chido has said, we have the potential and has created, enabled us with the economic opportunities for the young people where the young itself can utilize. No tariff barriers, non-tariff barriers are all eliminated, and we're hoping for that, right? So go Africa, go African youth. So now we'll proceed to Mr. Daniel Adunya, a representative for Ms. Prudence, the African Union Gender, Youth and Women Directorate.
The first one is around the essence. Why do we organize Model African Union or Model UN or Model anything for that matter, right? Especially young people, fresh graduates, or those still in university and high schools, we always organize Model African Union. And interestingly, from the perspective of always when we talk about young people for us is about transitioning in life, transitioning in livelihoods, transitioning from being a child to adulthood, and that's where we always find ourselves. One of the key aspects for young people is employment and employability. In fact, I personally believe youth employment particularly, and poverty are almost the key problems for everything that we have on our continent. Whether they manifest themselves as tribal problems, ethnic problems, religious problems, anything, the fundamental core is poverty. If there's no poverty or economic opportunities for young people, other aspects are just exploitation tools who can get to the front faster, and that's because the economic pie is very small. And when we look at the employment sector, it's very interesting is that on one hand, young people come out with skills from universities, and at the same time, the employers are saying these are not the skills that we want. Why? Young graduates come out from universities with hard skills. And what you sell for your employer says, when you say, I'm an architect, I am an electrician, I am a lawyer, I am a doctor, a lot of employers, when they are surveyed, what they say is that they want soft skills from their employees. In fact, the primary criteria for hiring young people for most employers are never hard skills, because the vacancy already talks about, if they're looking for an architect, it says already an architect or a lawyer. So they would be hiring you based on your soft skills. That means problem-solving skills, communication skills, team-building skills. And where do you get those skills? Unfortunately, mostly not in formal educations. You would not get these skills in universities. That's why you come to places like Model Simulation, Model African Union Simulation, to get exactly the skills: problem-solving skills, team building, communication. So please don't take it lightly. And I want to congratulate all of you for taking up on this challenge and being here today. Please, a round of applause for yourselves as well for taking up on this challenge. My second point comes more closer to this year's theme, which is also the theme of the year for the African Union for the year 2023 around the CFTA. Already you have a lot of information, I'm sure, in preparation for this model simulation. Ms. Chido mentioned a few components, that this is the largest free trade area in the world. This is both by geography and the number of countries that it has, and also the opportunities that it would have. So I'm not going to repeat about the CFTA. You can all read about it.
As I have mentioned in the opening of the program, this event will be about accelerating the implementation of AFTFCA. So I feel like we should actually talk about what AFTFCA is. It is the world's largest free trade treaty formulated in 2018, bringing together the 55 countries of African Union and 8 regional economic communities. As part of its mandate, the AFTFCA will eliminate trade barriers and boost intra-African open trade. It will also contribute to establishing regional value chains in Africa, enabling investment and job creation. And in order for AFTFCA to be implemented, at least there should be 15 countries that has accepted and ratified the AFTFCA, which only 4 African countries have ratified it. In general, AFTFCA will help Africa become economically strong, which will pave way for political and social stability by creating trade interdependency among each other.
But the only message I want to give you is to say, as young people, basically, these are the realities or the future we are entering into as citizens of Africa. So maybe the generation before us have laid the foundations, and we thank them for that. I believe from all the initiatives around Agenda 2063, the CFTA, for me personally, is the most meaningful one because it's tangible. It's about free movement of citizens, services, and goods and capital, and with that, opportunities. But the question is, what does it hold for you? Because it's not enough to say, we generally like to say CFTA is good, but what does it mean for all of us? What does it mean when we open our border and we say it's a free circulation of labor, of capital, of goods? It means you maybe, I assume most of you are Ethiopians, you as Ethiopians would be able to go to any of the 55 countries looking for employment, be it in Botswana, in Nigeria, in Egypt, in South Africa, in Central African Republic. But that also means other young people, other investors, other employers would also be coming to Ethiopia to also compete with you. And the question is, are we competitive as young people for globalization? Are we putting ourselves, and I think this comes even at a very timely moment. I'm sure you all have seen the results of this year's Yematrik Utit. Yeah? Yes. I know it has been a discussion in the corners and corridors and everything like that. And the fundamental question arises for all of us is that, are we competitive as young people to embrace globalization? Are we competitive enough to embrace the continental free trade area as young people? And also, more importantly, how do they lose? And the key point is, how do you do a trade-off? Where is the compromise? Because the reality is, CFTA is already signed, ratified. You cannot reverse it any longer. You are moving into the future. So the question is not how do we reverse it and go back, but rather how do we make it work for us? So I challenge you to make the most out of it, to learn, but also to have a lot of fun as you go. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak in front of you today, and I wish you success in this model simulations in the coming 2 days. Congratulations.
Thank you very much for passing a very important pointers to the young people, more of a suggestion and advice, and also making them aware where we sit now and what we can do. Right? It's an amazing thing, because I was just thinking, when you say employability, employment, we just graduate from high school and then we just pass to the university. And I just graduated before 5 months. Imagine. And I was like, okay, where do we start? Because what we know is, I'm a lawyer, so I know the civil procedure code, I know the criminal, I know all the international laws, but when it comes to like employment, it's not just about that. It's about leadership, it's about communication skills, it's about diplomacy, negotiation, teamwork, and it just goes by, problem-solving skill, and so on. Do we all have that? Do we all have the patience? It also asks patience and diligence and commitment, because you're not just going to go directly to the, directly going to have a job. So you strive through that. You get to know how it's important. The other is about the African continental trade. We can't say there's still a barrier, as it has been said. There's still a barrier. There's still a place where we can utilize those opportunities, but you know, you have to find your way. And I hope the young people, like it has been said, take its own responsibility to take the responsibility, to take the duty, to take the opportunity and utilize it in a way that we can bring the Africa we want, the African Continental Trade Area Agreement that could benefit the young people and its whole African population. Thank you very much, Mr. Daniel Adung, and now we pass to His Excellence Ambassador Salah, Head of African Governance Architecture, Secretary at the African Union Commission. Please welcome His Excellence with a round of applause.
A pre-summit event is extremely important because you're going to be talking about the Continental Free Trade Agreement, the CFTA, which is the theme of this summit, accelerating the implementation of the CFTA. But I'm not going to really speak much about it. Daniel did, and I'm sure you will be having more conversations about it. But let me focus on only 3 issues that came to mind. Issue number 1. Every morning when you wake up as a young man and woman, I think your first question is, what is your plan for the day? What do you intend to do? Of course, if you go to school, then going to school will be part of your plan. If you have a job, then going to work will be part of your plan. If you are looking for a job, then seeking an opportunity will be part of your plan. But in addition to that, how are you seeing yourself as a young man or woman contributing to building your societies at the grassroots level, your communities, your country, your region, and then your continent? These questions are important for us as African young men and women. And I said for us, that means I'm including myself as part of you as young men and women, because that's how I believe. I'm still young, if not in age, I'm still young in heart, and that is why I feel like I'm part of you. And that is why I'm trying to think louder with you on how we can indeed reflect on being the leaders of today and the leaders of tomorrow. I'm saying this because I always try to remind the young men and women in Africa that they should never rest and accept what they are told by the elders and others, that they are the leaders of tomorrow. Because if you rest and if you accept this as a fact, then you would not have a role today to play. But indeed, as a young man, as young men and women of Africa, you are the leaders of today and the leaders of tomorrow. And that is why you are here today, to shape your skills as a leader by gaining more knowledge on this very important treaty, how to implement it, how to be part not only in the implementation, but also the advocacy and promotion of this very important treaty, the CFTA. So therefore, you have a role to play as a leader. You have a role to play as an African young man and woman. And that is why when you wake up in the morning tomorrow, you should not limit your thoughts and plans to only how to get a job or how to go to school or how to do your job. But you should add to that a new agenda item, how you can contribute to building the Africa we want and the Africa we deserve, because you are the leader of today and you are the leaders of tomorrow. I hope we are in agreement. My second point, coming back to the free trade agreement, we have a unique instrument with a unique mechanism that is based in Accra, the Secretariat, to implement this fantastic treaty. But we have more to do. Now the Continental Free Trade Agreement speaks about the movement of goods. The movement of goods. If you have something that produced in Ethiopia, it should cross the border to Sudan, to Eritrea, to anywhere without taxation, without restrictions. This is the idea, to open the borders for goods. But who usually take the goods? Can the goods go by themselves from countries to another? If you have, for example, tomatoes or potatoes or anything from Ethiopia, you want to take them to Eritrea. Can you put them in boxes and then put them on the road and say goodbye? And then by themselves they will go? Or they need someone to take them. They need a human being to take them, right? So that is why we need to also promote through you today the protocol on free movement of persons. The protocol on free movement of persons. Why? Because the protocol on free movement of persons will certainly complement the Continental Free Trade Agreement that we are currently busy advocating for and promoting across the continent. With free movement of persons, we will not be able to achieve our ultimate goals of promoting the Continental Free Trade Agreement by moving the goods around the continent. My last point, related to the same topic and subject, it's about youth and women. In many cases, I don't know, for those who traveled by road between here and Sudan, between here and Eritrea, between here and Djibouti, between here and South Sudan, between here and Kenya. All of these borders between Ethiopia and these countries that I mentioned, if you go there in person, you will see many women carrying goods on their heads, trying to cross either from Ethiopia to Kenya or from Kenya to Ethiopia. I'm not sure if you have seen that. These women are not only here, but in fact they are everywhere in Africa, crossing between country to another. Between Sudan and Chad, between Sudan and Egypt, between Burundi and Rwanda, between Congo and Uganda. Many African countries, you will see old women. Why are they trying to do that? They're not trying to get rich, in reality. But they are trying to come back with a little bit of income to feed their kids, because they are in many cases the breadwinners, women. That is why during this process, we need to give those women the attention they need. We need to support them in their efforts to promote their livelihood, their well-beings, by crossing the borders between countries. So what can you do during your conversation today? What ideas and thoughts you can come up with to support the women that are crossing the borders with trades and goods to promote the livelihood of their kids and their families? We have seen also youth leaving Africa, trying to go to Europe, trying to go to the Arab world. But in many cases, sadly, many of them lose their lives in the Sahara because of the heat. And many of them, they drown in the Mediterranean or the Red Sea, and they don't reach to where they want to reach. A few of them make it, but even those who make it, they struggle, they go through difficulties. In many cases, they commit suicides after reaching Europe, after reaching the Arab island, simply because they don't really find the dreams and the promises that they were hoping for and they were wishing for. That is why in your deliberations today and tomorrow, you need to focus on how we can convince our leaders to open the borders for the African youth to move peacefully and freely within the continent. That way, we will ensure that our dividends, our assets, our youth lives are preserved, protected, instead of losing youth every day in the Mediterranean, in the Red Sea, in the Sahara, because they want to have a better life. Let's make Africa a better place for all of us to live. Let's make Africa not only the tree of life, but in fact, a place for our youth to have a better life, to have a better future. That way, we will ensure that we are not losing our youth. You know why we need to do that? We need to do that because of one reason. Because Africa is the youngest continent among all other continents, as you know. And it is young because of our youth. So if we lose our youth, then we lose our assets. Then no petroleum, no oil, no diamond, no gold, nothing else will replace our youth if we lose them. That is why the focus should be and must be on how we will allow our moderator, as she said, as a lawyer, to go to South Africa and work there, to go to Sudan and work there, to go to Egypt and work there freely without no problem. For you as an Ethiopian to cross the border to Sudan, own a business, start a new life, or cross the border to Kenya, or for a Kenyan to come here, that way, and that is the only way, I repeat, that we can build the Africa we want and the Africa we deserve. I thank you very much.
Well, in my speech or this role, I'm going to focus on three main issues: having a stable countries and also having peaceful countries, so that we can make a peaceful environment to implement the free trade area agreement. You can't have economic development without peace and security, without having peaceful countries, and without having stabilization of peace and security status in the country. That's why we call here for accountable elections and also peaceful elections. And if the country, for example, in unstable status, that means it has to come stable again and then go through the peace agreements. Then you can actually move towards the development and move towards the implementation of agreements, and the most importantly is the free trade agreement. So this will only happen through policies and examples, and good examples that we see. If we can move to the policies, and which will be your task today, which policies are in each and every country. For example, if you are talking about Mozambique, which policies that we have on the national level that will give us conducive condition for implementing the AFTFCA. And also the question is that, is the country already in a stable situation in terms of the peace and security? It will also set the foundation for sustaining the implementation of the AFTFCA. So maybe through these two questions, this will be the task on the national level. So every and each country, it has to have that stabilization in terms of the peace and security status, then they can move to implement. Because having the stable peace and security status in the country, that means the parliament as well is stable to sign and ratify the agreement. Then we move to the implementation, which will be either for the ministries or the institution that will go on the ground and implement the agreement. So this is the task. You have to see whether the country is which status in terms of the peace and security. Then we move to the implementation. And then we have the regional blocks. So in this treaty, you have different regions. The African continent, according to the African Union Commission, is divided into 5 regions. We have North Africa, we have East Africa, Central Africa, West Africa, and Southern Africa. But in terms of this on the implementation of this agreement, they give the task not only for the countries individually, but they also said, let's coordinate on the regional level. And then when we coordinate on the regional level of these 5 regions, then it will be easier to go to the continental level, and then we say, okay, now we move as one. So we have 8 regional economic communities that they were established based on a treaty in 1991. It's called Abuja Treaty. We have Sen-Sad, This is one of the regional economic communities. We have ECAS, we have ECOWAS, we have SADC, we have EAC, we have EGAD, and we have others. We have the OMA and others. They are 8 regional economic communities. They are part of the implementation of the free trade area. So now if we look at the 3 levels, you have the national level, which is the countries, and then you have the regional level, which is the regional economic communities. You can't move without the regional economic communities, because within each and every regional economic communities, you have the number of countries. For example, we have COMESA. It has 21 African countries, that is from Eastern Africa, Southern Africa, and some from Northern Africa. We have ECOWAS, they have 15 countries. This is for the Western African countries. So the task for each and every region is to coordinate among themselves, and then each region comes with the with other regions. Then we can move as one. So now, what is the free trade movement? The free trade agreement, as Ambassador Salah said in his speech, he said, we can't move goods and services without moving people or personals from country to country. Therefore, the African Union also is established or agreed on a treaty that is called the Free Movement of Persons. That was in 2018. But until now, the status that I have from the African Union website, we have only 32 signatures, and we have only 4 countries who ratified, and we have 4 countries who deposited the treaty. So you only need at least 15 countries ratifying this treaty so it can be coming into force. The issue now is that we don't have much countries who ratified this treaty of free movement of persons. Therefore, the task will be today is also how to encourage these countries to put in place this agreement and also sign, ratify, and then deposit the free movement of persons. Therefore, it will make it easier, or it will help into the implementation of the AFTFCA agreement, because without free movement of persons, you won't get really the free movement of goods. And then I wanted to conclude with the role of youth and women. We have good examples in terms of the models that we are using to mainstream youth and young people into different aspects. For example, for the democratic governance aspect or the peace and security aspect, we have young people and women as critical mass that has to be within the processes of the implementation of treaties, or even to have active role in voting in elections, and also to have active roles in educating other young people. So this model, as we can hear from any political processes, you would see that young people already, they are there. Either in parliament, they have quotas, or even in institutions and different public institutions. Now, how do we transform this model, and how do we take the advantage of the same approaches that we used in democracy, governance, or even engaging in peace and security operations? How do we take the same approaches in the new agreement, which is the AFTFTA? Now, what I'm going to say is, let's use the same approaches, either quotas, either to to actually initiate new policies to engage young people in the free trade agreement on the national level, then regional level, then we take it up to the continental level. This is from my side. I thank you so much.